Welcome back. All right, so resuming a series that I had going up until the draft. And so we're going to keep it going. The 2020 Stanley Cup champion, Tampa Bay Lightning. 2020, of course, a year that, well, it was a year, wasn't it? Went on for about 10 years. And what happened was the NHL shut things down in the middle of March, and we didn't get hockey back until August. And when they brought hockey back, they said, all right, we got to make sure that this is a situation where if we start playing, we want to be able to get this all the way across the finish line. We don't want to start playing and then have things get shut down again. So they went with the bubble scenario of playing out of Toronto as well as playing out of Edmonton. There were discussions of whether or not they might go to Vegas, and then last minute it was switched to Edmonton and Toronto. And it went very well. It was a tournament that went very, very well. It was one that definitely tried the patience of players. I would imagine it tried the patience of coaches, ice time and all that fun stuff, and players not really enjoying the bubble environment that much. So much so that when the NHL came out of that bubble, they had lost, it was like, what, $100 million they had lost putting on the bubble at least, and players came out of it saying never again. So it was so much fun. The players said, we're never doing that again, and we'd rather not talk about it. And the NHL kind of agreed and said, yeah. So for the Eastern-based teams, they were playing out of Toronto, and that was the case until we get to the Final Four, and then all of them were playing out of Edmonton. So Tampa Bay, playing out of the Eastern hub, right? They go 2-1 in the tournament leading up to the start of the official playoffs. So to decide on seedings, because this regular season was not finished, they had a tournament to decide the top four. And then the bottom four would be decided by a play-in tournament. Now, Tampa Bay was a top four team in the East at the time of the pause, and therefore they had they were part of the tournament deciding their seeding, and so going 2-1 means they got one of the top seeds. Not that it necessarily matters. This is the thing. That year, Tampa Bay went 43-21-6. They had a very good regular season, but they were coming off of that 2018-2019 season where they had the ridiculous record. You could tell they took their foot off the gas a little bit that regular season, but remember, we hadn't had hockey from March through till August. We had no idea what to expect. The rosters had been frozen, so there weren't any trades that had been made. There was no big signings of any sort, last minute. We had no idea what to expect in this tournament. So, in round one, they ended up against Columbus. Columbus had upset Toronto in the play-in round. So instead of getting Toronto, they end up getting Columbus. Columbus, they take them out in five. They clearly remembered the year before where Columbus had taken them out in four straight. Game one was an absolute, it was fantastic. It goes to a fifth overtime. So somewhere Mike Milbury punching air, right? And at 10:20 of the fifth overtime in that first game, Tampa Bay gets the winner. It's Brayden Point. Brayden Point was the guy in those playoffs. And while Kucherov had a fantastic playoff and he did end up leading them in scoring by the end of it, I thought without Brayden Point, they don't win the Stanley Cup that year. Point also scored at 5:12 of overtime in Game 5 for them to win that series in 5. Point himself had 7 points in that 5-game series, 4 goals, 3 assists. Vasilevsky was 4-1 with a .930 save percentage. Vasilevsky was absolutely fantastic throughout that run. It was ridiculous. And then they get into round two against the Boston Bruins. They had shown they could beat Boston not that long before the 2020 playoffs, and they showed it again. They beat them in 5. There were 2 overtime goals for Tampa Bay in that series as well. First is Palat at 4:40 of overtime in Game 2 to tie the series at 1. If Boston wins that game, right? But they don't, so the series was tied at 1. Hedman then gets the series winner at 14:10 of the second overtime in Game 5. So it takes till double overtime for them to punch their ticket to go to Edmonton, but they do so. And so for Boston, they're just not able to find that ability in overtime to overcome what is a pretty potent attack by the Tampa Bay Lightning. Point, a goal and 7 assists in that series, leads them in scoring again. Vasilevsky 4-1 with a .936 save percentage. Absolutely ridiculous numbers. So at Scotiabank Arena, they go 8-2 in the playoffs. Now, understanding as well that their official record in the playoffs was 18-7 that year, but it's kind of weird. I still qualify them as being 16-6 myself, but officially it's 18-7, right? So Round 3, they meet up with the New York Islanders. And the New York Islanders and the Tampa Bay Lightning are going to be friends at this, right? So they're going to meet again the following season. But in 2020, they beat the Islanders in 6. The Islanders were an upstart team. Not a lot expected of them going into that season. And they gave Tampa Bay, I think they gave Tampa Bay the toughest challenge of the playoffs. Kucherov came into his own that series with 2 goals and 8 assists for 10 points. Vasilevsky, 4-2 with a .933 save percentage. So that's 3 series, and his worst save percentage in any of those series was .930 against Columbus. Absolutely ridiculous numbers for Vasi. One overtime winner to speak of in that series for Tampa. Cirelli scores at 13-18 of overtime in Game 6 to win the series and go to the Stanley Cup Final. In that Stanley Cup Final, they run into the Dallas Stars. Dallas had been playing Cinderella. They'd been knocking off some pretty strong teams. Calgary, they knocked off. They knocked off the Colorado Avalanche and then did the same thing to the Vegas Golden Knights. So in the end, they're the team standing between the Tampa Bay Lightning and their first Stanley Cup since 2004. It ends up being a 6-game series. There's one overtime game to speak of where Tampa Bay wins it. Shattenkirk scores at 6:24 of overtime. That gave them a 3-1 series lead. Now, they lost Game 5 in double overtime against Dallas, but I never really had any doubt that Tampa Bay was winning that Stanley Cup. Dallas wasn't beating them 3 times in a row. Braden Point was the leading scorer in that series as well. 5 goals, 3 assists, 8 points. Vasilevsky goes 4-2 with a .911 save percentage. So his overall numbers are fantastic. Vasilevsky is one of the best goaltenders of this generation. And the overall numbers for Tampa Bay are very good. They never faced elimination. They didn't lose 2 games in a row in any scenario in these playoffs. That was a record they kept intact until this year, 2022. And their leading scorer during the regular season is their leading scorer during the playoffs. Kucherov, 68 games, 33 goals, 52 assists, 85 points during the regular season. In the playoffs, 25 games, 7 goals, 27 assists, 34 points. And then Stamkos. Now, Stamkos had been criticized for not being able to come through in Game 7s. The good news for Tampa was they never needed a Game 7. They also didn't really need Stamkos. In 57 games during the regular season, 29 goals, 37 assists, 66 points. We knew Stamkos was hurting. He played 1 game and, what was it, a minute? He scored the 1 goal in the 1 game on his 1 shift and then didn't play the rest of the game. Wasn't good to go, but he still got that goal. And it felt like part of what happened in that Stanley Cup run was a rally around Stamkos by his teammates. And that Stamkos being willing to go out there and give it a shot when he was nowhere near being able to play really got his team into it and really helped get his team over the hump. So it is weird that Stamkos, it might have been the most impressive game in his playoff history, and it was the only game he played in that playoff run, and they win that Stanley Cup. He still gets the ring for that. Now, Braden Point, 66 games, 25 goals, 39 assists, 64 points during the regular season. Pretty well kept secret in the NHL, but during those playoffs, that secret was out. 23 games, 14 goals, 19 assists, 33 points. Hedman, 66 games, 11 goals, 44 assists, 55 points during the regular season. During the playoffs, he played 25 games, 10 goals, 12 assists, 22 points. Hedman was the best defenseman in those playoffs as well. Alex Killorn, 68 games, 26 goals, 23 assists, 49 points in the playoffs. 24 games, 5 goals, 5 assists, 10 points. So 5 more goals than he had in this year's playoffs in 2022. And I still like Killorn, so we'll see whether or not he's still a Tampa Bay Lightning member next season. Cirelli, so all of these guys I've mentioned so far are still there. Cirelli, 68 games, 16 goals, 28 assists, 44 points during the regular season. In the playoffs, 25 games, 3 goals, 6 assists, 9 points in a shutdown role. Cirelli, an excellent shutdown forward, and he's being paid like an elite shutdown forward now by the Tampa Bay Lightning. Andre Palat, who has now moved on to New Jersey, 69 games, 17 goals, 24 assists, 41 points. In the playoffs, 25 games, 11 goals, 7 assists, 18 points. Palat's a guy who scores goals in big games. He is a player who ups his game when he needs to, when it's really important. And I think New Jersey's going to like that. I think Tampa Bay is going to miss that as well. Sergachev in 70 games, 10 goals, 24 assists, 34 points. In the playoffs, 25 games, 3 goals, 7 assists, 10 points. Sergachev, it just feels like every year he gets better. Shattenkirk, 70 games, 8 goals, 26 assists, 34 points. In the playoffs, he was important. 25 games, 3 goals, 10 assists, 13 points. Shattenkirk, of course, would move on, but gets his Stanley Cup ring. And again, he was important to that team. Tyler Johnson, 65 games, 14 goals, 17 assists, 31 points. They would move on from Johnson. In the playoffs, 25 games, 4 goals, 3 assists, 7 points. Vasilevsky, if it's playoff time, he will play every minute. 35, 14, and 3 during the regular season with a .917 save percentage. In the playoffs, 18 and 7 with a .927 save percentage. Ridiculous numbers. McElhinney was the backup, 8, 7, and 3 with a .906 save percentage. Curtis McElhinney gets himself a cup ring. So kudos to him on that. So it was a long run. In the season finished in September, that it began in October, and of course then the following season would start in January. Short turnaround times between the end of this season and the start of the next one. Short turnaround between the end of that season and the start of the one that we just finished. But this was quite the team. And you look at the depth. The guys who aren't in the top 10 here, obviously not goaltenders, Coleman and Gaudreau really stand out. These are guys they paid first-round draft picks to get. Heavy price to pay. But when you win the Stanley Cup, it is worth every penny. And both Barclay Goodrow and Blake Coleman right now are very well paid, in part because of their experience in Tampa and getting them to 2 straight Stanley Cups, starting with this one. Yanni Gourde, of course, member of the Seattle Kraken now, but definitely a big part of that run to the Cup. Pat Maroon, the one-man dynasty, right? This was his second year in a row winning a Stanley Cup. He had won one in St. Louis the year before that. Ryan McDonough, definitely not necessary. Well, see, this is the thing. It says depth. McDonough, though, was a key guy. Shot blocker, defense. They're really going to miss him. He's been traded out now because the salary cap is always going to be a problem for Tampa because they're always a top-notch team. They have a lot of success, and so that drives up the asking price for players and causes you to have to move guys out in order to keep other guys on your roster. Bogosian, a guy who was cast off and done, and then Tampa Bay signs him for peanuts, and they win the Stanley Cup with Bogosian. Chernak, excellent defensive defenseman with some physical side there to his game, and Chernak was definitely a big part of that. And Carter Verhaeghe got into a handful of games in the playoffs. Of course, he now being a member of the Florida Panthers because there's only so much depth to go around, and Verhaeghe, as talented as he is, he was definitely buried in Tampa behind a very talented team. And Cedric Paquette, who it's easy to forget now how important his fourth-line center abilities and his ability to shut other teams down was too. But this was a very well-balanced team, and in what was considered to be very trying circumstances, where you weren't seeing family, you were basically restricted to your hotel room, you had very limited areas you could go to and things you could do. They adapted. They got it done. They put their nose to the grindstone. They were through both the Toronto and the Edmonton bubbles, and they came out as the Stanley Cup champion. There was no need for any kind of a shutdown. The NHL got it done. And in the end, the Tampa Bay Lightning, understanding that Gary Bettman being able to throw together this tournament at a time of such great uncertainty in August of 2020, they brought him in for the team photo for the Stanley Cup. They felt like, no, Gary, you got to be in here. And so it was kind of a feel-good moment, although I know there were a lot of people who didn't feel good about Tampa Bay winning that Stanley Cup in 2020. And when we get to the 2021 Stanley Cup, there will be other things, obviously, to discuss when it comes to the Tampa Bay Lightning and that little thing about a salary cap that I might have mentioned during this video. But for this year, for that 2020 run, it was an impressive run by a team under some trying circumstances. And so, yeah, full value for that Stanley Cup. As I said 2 years ago, full value for that Stanley Cup. Stanley Cup right here, 2020. This was from the team store, so subscriber got it and sent it to me. But anyways, there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.